Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to go over the basic elements of a story. Keep in mind that this particular video is going to be covering the basic definitions, which is setting up the section in your notebook and also going over the first few slides of the presentation. So yes, you need to start here. Okay. If you're already starting on the plot section, then that means you're missing a whole chunk of information. So keep in mind, I'm going to be going through this information rather quickly, but this is a video that you can stop, rewind, and do at your own pace. So just keep in mind, I'll be doing things a little quick. Okay. Previously, if you have not already done so, we filled out a whole section on grammar and punctuation in our notebooks. And I have not yet updated my table of contents because I am being irresponsible. So grammar and punctuation is our first update. Now, the new section we're going to create is going to be elements of a story, as you can see down there in the PowerPoint. So this is page number 1, page number 2. This right here is page number 3. This will be elements of a story, or elements of literature, or elements of lit. Doesn't really matter. Elements of narrative. Doesn't really matter what you call it. It's all kind of the same thing. So it's going to be page 3. Okay, now remember, this opening video is going to be a general overview of everything that we're going to talk about, and this is also going to give you the opening instructions or basic definitions. So if you are missing anything in the notes, when you are done with this video, you should move on to the first element of a story, which will be plot. Okay. So starting off really quickly, what are we doing today? We're covering the elements of a story. These are the basic building blocks that go into constructing a story. I've narrowed it down to like the top 10, and I've spent a lot of time researching this information, so this should be a pretty definitive list here. Now, in case you guys are curious, why do we need to do this stuff in the first place? Well, by understanding how stories are built, you can understand stories on a deeper level. And since being in an English class is all about understanding literature, that's kind of the point here. So this set of notes, while it will seem very long, will be beneficial to you, especially in later grades, because a lot of this information has been very thoroughly researched. And in addition, a lot of these notes probably will fix things you might have learned incorrectly in previous grades, if that is a thing. No offense to any teachers watching. And in addition to that, you need to understand, like, while these notes will fix a lot of analysis things for you or give you analysis knowledge, this will not give you like a love of storytelling necessarily. This is purely on an information kind of thing. So keep it in mind, there are limitations to this. Okay. We've already set up our notebook, so we are good to go. First thing that we have right here are basic definitions. There's going to be a few of them, so let's go ahead and get started. And along the way, I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to do this at my own pace, but what I would prefer is if you need a break, that you simply pause the video. So we're going to do basic definitions first. Okay. For basic definitions, I'm just going to start off a major section right there, and then I'm going to indent and then start off my definitions. Okay. Again, you don't have to do it this way. I'm just showing you for organization purposes. The first word I have on here is a story. You'd be surprised. Some people don't know what a story is. Okay, a story, the easiest way to describe it is a series of events told chronologically. That means in timed order or in sequential order. Okay. A series of events told chronologically. Next, you're going to have a genre. Now, genres are really complicated, but the easiest way to describe them is that they're going to be a category of art. So that's what I'm going to say. A category. Excuse my spelling. Category of art. And in case you're like, well, what do you mean by that? It's a category of art that is based on a particular style or pattern. So basically, when artists, authors, musicians, whatever you want to say, when those people create patterns in things and they are repeated, eventually this becomes a genre. So it's a category of art based on a style or pattern / pattern. Okay, this is a category of art based on a style or pattern. All right, now to show you a quick little example of what I mean by this, you can take a look at this chart that I have. So way back in the day, you guys would have electronic music in the form of like funk and disco. And funk and disco evolved into this world of electronic music that you see here. So this is a chart that shows you not only different genres of electronic music, but also different subgenres. So smaller movements within all of these major movements. So you can see, like, even in the world of hip hop and rap, there's a ton of different subgenres that exist. All the little lines that you see on this chart are going to be lines that show the interconnectivity of all of these things. And then over here is just a list of bands that fall into each major category. So out of funk and disco, you eventually had just traditional electronic dance music. And out of EDM, EDM expanded into techno, expanded into trance, which those things blew up into their own little field. And then you just had like things like dubstep and drum and bass and progressive and all that other stuff. So genres are a category of art based on a style. And those styles can expand to include or not include certain things. And that's how new things are born, right? Okay, moving on, we have a narrative. A narrative is basically a story. So I'm going to say a story or account of something. I use this example in class. An account is going to be like your take on something. It's going to be like your perspective, your viewing of something. You guys usually hear that when you go to like court, or you hear court drama or anything like that. They'll ask you, what is your account of the situation that took place? As your story. Okay. Next, you have narration. Narration is the art of telling a story. I don't know why I wrote sorry. Whoops. It should be the art of telling a story. Keep in mind that narration is really difficult. There are some people who are really good at it and some people who are not good at it. Next, you have a narrator. The narrator of the story is going to be the speaker or the presenter of the story. I would personally prefer you to use the term speaker because that becomes inclusive for things like poetry. In poetry, you always want to refer to them as a speaker. You should not assume that the narrator is going to be an author or you. Sometimes it's a disembodied voice, sometimes it's a character in the story, sometimes it's a character out of the story. Sometimes narrators can lie to you. So what I'm going to say is the speaker of the story. Okay, just a review real quick. We have what is a story? It's a series of events. What is a genre? A category of art based on a style. What is a narrative? A narrative is a story or an account of something. What is narration? It's the art of telling the story. What is the narrator? The speaker of the story. Good. Okay. Moving on to the next set. We have these 4 words that are going to appear here are actually important terms. Sometimes teachers don't teach them. Sometimes you won't hear about these things until college. I think that they're really important, so I'm going to include them here. Okay, you have the word prose. Prose is Latin for straightforward. So prose is going to be normal, ordinary writing. It is writing that is just straightforward. It's normal. What does that look like? Maybe like a book. So in parentheses, I'm going to put a book. Or like a news article. Just something normal. Okay. Now contrast that with this next word. This next word is called verse. If you guys are music people at all, then verse should make a lot of sense to you. Verse is the language of song. It is melodic language. It is rhythmical language. It is sing-song language. So if prose is just like regular old words, verse is going to be something, it's language with like a rhythm to it or some sort of melody to it. So I'm going to say song-like writing. That would be the language of poetry or rap or music. You get the idea. Song-like writing. Now, I understand from my definition there, I understand what melodic or rhythmical language means. So if that makes sense to you, then you should write down those words. But for simplicity's sake, I just put song-like writing. And then in parentheses, I'm going to say like music and poetry. Okay, just to make sure you guys have a good idea. Take a look at that. Okay, moving on. You have these two words here called connotation and denotation. I'm going to start with denotation, despite what the PowerPoint says. Denotation starts with a D. Dictionary starts with a D. That's the way I remember it. And denotation is going to be the literal dictionary definition of something. The literal dictionary definition. Okay. Now you have this word that is connotation. Connotation is going to be complicated. Denotation is the literal dictionary definition of a term. Connotation is going to be the symbolic, the emotional, the cultural connection to a word. Now, the easiest way to demonstrate something like this is to demonstrate it in person. So, like, you guys have probably seen a person who does one of these, okay? The peace sign, right? Now, it's this way, it's the peace sign. This way, somebody's like, deuces, right? And they're saying goodbye. So, depending on how you do that, it means a different thing, right? Now, from a denotation standpoint, quite literally, it's just me holding my two fingers up, and it doesn't really mean anything, right? Connotatively, though, from a connotation standpoint, in America, at least, it means peace or doses, right? That's just kind of how it is. Now, keep in mind, connotation is different everywhere you go. So if you go to a different country, some people, you might be like doses, and you might say goodbye to somebody, and people won't understand what you're doing, right? Because it's not really a cultural thing there. You guys could think of it like there used to be kids on the playground, when you were super little, that were like, oh yeah, if you hold up your pinky, it's like flipping off a person in another country. I mean, maybe, but nobody knows, right? Little kids just make up things like that because they don't know any better, because they want to seem like edgy, right, and exciting. But it could be possible that certain hand gestures or physical gestures mean something in one place and not something in another place. So, denotation, one more time, is the literal dictionary definition, the literal meaning of something. Connotation is going to be the symbolic / cultural / emotional definition of something. It is the symbolic or emotional definition of something. Okay? I hope that makes sense. It is the not literal definition. All right? And keep in mind that connotation is different for everybody. And if you're reading something like a religious text or poetry, music, something like that that's written in verse, it probably has a lot of connotation in there, and that's open for you, the reader or the audience, to decide on what it means. And that's where we have literature in general, where people debate about what things mean. Okay, for this next section, I'm going to, on these notes, which I'm basically making for me, I'm going to kind of cramp them together just to save space. But keep in mind, in your own notebook, you can space things out however you wish. I'm just doing it my way. You don't have to do it my way, okay? But the next thing that we're going to cover is an elements reference guide. So this is going to be a quick, at-a-glance look at everything we're going to talk about, okay? So for this, elements reference guide. Just like that, all right? Same thing I did here. and I'm going to just write out quick little definitions. Now, the reason why you're doing this is so, like, if you forget something at a glance, rather than flipping through pages of notes, you could just really quickly come to this page and be like, oh, yeah, right, conflict is this. Okay, theme is this, just in case you forget. So the first thing, plot. What is plot? There are a lot of people that say plot is the story itself. That is incorrect. The plot is supposed to be the arrangement of events in the story. So plot is supposed to be the arrangement of events in the story. It is not the story itself, despite what some people might say. Okay. Next, you have the setting. And the setting is going to be the time and place. So time/location. It's the time and place of a story. It's pretty simple, right? Next, you have the characters. And for characters, I want you specifically to write this down. They are the agents. That word in particular is really important. They are the agents that drive the story. The reason why I use that word is because there are some people out there that are like, oh yeah, it's the people that drive the story. No. You know, sometimes you're going to watch a movie like Zootopia or Finding Nemo or WALL-E or iRobot. You know, you're going to have characters that are not humans. So to call them people, you know, would be inaccurate. What you want to say is they are the agents that drive the story. If you have something like the Dam Keeper, WALL-E, you know, those are characters that are not human. They are personified or a different species, whatever you want to say. So they're the agents that drive the story. That would be a more precise way to address this. Okay? So far, what we have is plot. What is plot? The arrangement of events in the story. It's the order of events. Setting, which is the time and place. And characters are the agents that drive the story forward. Pretty simple. Going on to the next set. Point of view. Point of view is going to be your camera angle of the story. Point of view is your camera angle of the story. So it is the way that you are composing the shot, so to speak. Next, you would have theme. For theme, I also want you to write this down word for word, exactly as it is. Theme is the hidden universal message of a story. It is the hidden universal message of a story. Cool. Just to keep my notes clean, I'm going to skip down one line. But again, I'm just doing that just to make it clean. You don't have to do that. All right. Next, you have tone and mood. Technically, just so you know, tone and mood are technically different things. At the high school level, it's kind of just like a technicality sort of thing. You can worry about that when you go to college, take college English. For my definition, I'm going to lump them together, and I'm going to say it is the emotional attitude of the story. I do kind of dive into the differences and what they are when we actually talk about that element. But for now, let's just simplify it. It's the emotional attitude of the story. All right? Next, you're going to have conflict, which is one of my favorite ones to teach. Conflict is the overall problem of the story, or the challenge, overall problem or challenge. All right, conflict is the overall problem. Then you're going to move into symbolism. Symbolism gets pretty complicated, but I think the way that I cover it is pretty simple. You might have some teachers that are going to tell you that symbolism has to be this one thing. That's not true. Symbolism can be anything. So what I'm going to write down here is that symbolism is the important focal points of the story. The important focal points of story. Cool. And then I have these last two. These last two elements are something that I added in just recently because after some thought and some discussion with my former students, I have realized that they are pretty important. And I feel dumb for not having them on here before. So if you're one of my old students and you've never seen these before, I'm so sorry I failed you. But this is a definitive list now. Okay, style is going to be the way that the story is actually constructed. Plot is going to be the arrangement of events, but style is going to be the way you actually execute the story. You know, are you doing it in a movie-like fashion? Are you doing it in this format or this format? Do you have a poetry book? Do you have a book with spine on it? You know, things like that. So style is going to be the way the story is constructed. And organized. Or printed. Or published, whatever you want to say. It's all kind of the same thing. It's the way the style, the way the story is constructed or organized or published. Like, for example, you might be an author and you write a really, really good script, and then, you know, maybe you can't get that script published as a book, but you can get that script published as a video game. Okay, well, that would be the style that the story is basically built in. Now, experience, this should be pretty self-explanatory, but the experience is basically going to be the author's life experience. So how the author's life shapes their text or whatever it is that they create. So I'm just going to write author's life experience, and I'm going to put EXP for short. Okay. That right there is going to be all 5 elements of, or sorry, 5. I just looked at the first 5. That's going to be all 10 of the most important elements that go into building a story. Now, the way that this video series is going to work is below this video, you're going to see all the different elements listed on the website, and I'm going to create separate videos for each of these elements, as well as dedicated pages for all of the slides that I cover and all the information that I have. And I'm also going to make recommendations based on each element here. So where you're going to want to start is right on plot. So if you want to keep watching, go ahead and click on the video for plot. But just so you know, it's going to be a new page, and there's going to be a new element, and it's just going to be plot, and then we're going to go from there. Okay, so if you want to continue this video series, start on plot. Otherwise, your notes will be totally out of order. That would be crazy. So good luck.